Well, hi there, how you doing? This is Big G coming from Reading to you this evening. Thought I'd pop up a wee video, have a look at something else. Hopefully it would catch your attention. I got a reply from someone with regard to one of my videos. I was hoping it would be thumbs up. This was excellent. It was, you need to look at your grammar. So, at least they watched it, on that, I'm dyslexic, so if they're hoping for better grammar, it's just not going to happen. 50-year-old, I'm no interested in studying English. They just have to get by. I've got by 50 years, we'll get by for some more. I hope your week's okay. I had a problem with the heating the other day there, and the heating's packed in, so I'm currently now being heated by this tiny little heater. The chap brought it for the van. I said to him, could you not get anything smaller? He wasn't too impressed, but the thing's tiny. Although he's saying that, it is flipping roasting, so it's quite a good wee thing. No hot water for Basso, so I'm going to smell a wee bit more than normal. So if you pass me and smell a pong, you'll know exactly what it is. So I want to think of tonight. I used to work as an undertaker. I was trying to think how long ago it was. I think it was maybe 45 years now. Just in Bonnybridge, just outside Falkirk. I really loved the job. Maybe it was working with dead people and I got on with them quite well. It was the the reason I enjoyed it. I'm not quite sure. They never spoke back and they never complained, so I really enjoyed them. But it was a good job. I got involved in everything. Driving the cars, helping with the bodies, dress them. I even got to take funerals of people who weren't attached to the church and wanted something a wee bit different. I always brought myself in between the humanist and the minister, so it was like largely about the person with a wee sprinkling of, you know, what salvation is. So I did a lot of them and I actually really enjoyed them. It's the things I like to do. Not pressure people into Christianity, but just to show them a different way in life, eh? So I did all that and it was really interesting. One of the interesting things, and the most that we did, was we worked for the police. So any suspicious deaths, we were called to it. So we were coming across, a whole lot of different situations. Guy died, drug overdose, stuff like that. You know, a guy, suspicious deaths, we were called to. Quite a few of them actually in and around Falkirk and one at Stirling. I always found them interesting. These were long and tiring jobs though, because once you picked it up, you had to take it to the morgue, generally what was Edinburgh. And that's where they went for suspicious deaths. But I found that really exciting. Some of the scenes that we saw were gross beyond measure, but I enjoyed the job within itself. Why am I mentioning this? When I worked in the parlour, they used to have embalmers coming in and embalm the body to make it look great for someone who wanted to have an open casket, or loved ones to see their loved ones for the last times. So as usual, it was a girl who came in and she was absolutely stunning. I always tried it on with her, but you know, I think the dead had more chance than I did. But this day we had a trainee coming in and we were all abuzz at this. We were all quite excited. You're wondering why. It turns out, we learnt an hour before she arrived that she was a trainee who had Tourette's. Yep, you've heard that right. She had Tourette's and she was working in the embalmer field. So she was coming in to train. They had to clock up certain hours, theory and also practice. So she was coming in this day and we were all like, you know, thinking back to some of the Tourette's we've seen on the telly. Now, let me just say first of all that it must be horrendous to have this. I certainly wouldn't like it. I'm offensive enough. But she was coming in and then the whole place was just wondering what was going to happen. So I'm out in the car park washing down one of the cars and she comes walking in. Now the boss's car was sitting at the front door and his dog was in it. He had the Doberman. And she's just about to pass it and the dog goes absolutely crazy. I'm trying to remember what the dog was called. And just like that, she goes, "Fuck up, doggy." And I'm practically on the floor laughing. It was just like that. It's just so quick. I'm glad I wasn't in the scene at that point because I hate to imagine what she'd call me. So she pops in to where the body was and, you know, she's getting ready. And, you know, there was like 5 of us there that day, all doing different things. But for some reason, we all found an excuse to go into the place where the bodies were being embalmed. So we were all hanging about there. And she's obviously, she comes in already. She takes one look at me and she goes, "Weirdo." She got it spot on, absolutely right. She did this with everybody in the room, so everybody got a comment about how she thought of them. The boss was quite tubby, so he was fatty. So it it was a place of soberness, but trying to hold in the laughter was absolutely incredible. I mean, she started to work at it, and people were trying to instruct her, so she's like saying to them, shut up, or go away, or, you know, a lot of swearing was happening. I actually felt sorry for the dead, because they got it the worst, you know. Every now and again she'd be like, dead bitch, broken brain, and bitch, cunt, weirdo, fanny, prick. It was just like constant. Everybody left the room because nobody could handle it, and I'm just standing there. That's quite interesting what was happening, that's why I stayed there. But the carnage that she brought, I mean, the boss was furious. He's given it the old, how can she be trained to work in the funeral business? She never shuts up. She's always swearing. I mean, he was mortified. He walked away, and she just, the last year, to be fair to her, she wasn't embarrassed by it. She just, you know, got on with it. She was so used to it, and people, I think probably people laughing and staring, that credit to her, she didn't bother. We probably shouldn't have been as bad as we were. I just had to fight the giggles, and once you get them, you've got no chance. So I backed away out the room, but she was a bra girl as well, that's the thing. But could you imagine waking up in the morning after having sex with her? Dear, I hate to imagine what she called me. But that was one of the funny sides of the Undertaker business. Sadly, they were few and far between. Obviously, you can imagine dealing with people who have passed and dealing with their loved ones made it a very difficult profession. You're sitting with them, trying to reassure them, trying to understand how they feel, which was you could at times if you're lost a loved one. Trying to console someone who's in sobs is very, very difficult. It's a very stressful situation to be in, and it's something that's certainly not recommended for everybody. In my time there, I saw a lot of sad things, really, really sad things. I think every person worked in the Undertaker business had one death that really, you know, spoke to them and stayed with them. But there was that many to choose from. We were dealing with maybe 2 to 3 deaths a day, and I was out during the night. I was on call between 5 and 9. So one night I was out all night, which was exhausting. The amount of times you had to go to Edinburgh and then sit and wait for the police. We sat and waited for the police 2 hours one night, so it was a long, long stretch, tiredness. One of the saddest things I saw, actually, we picked up a boy behind a crematorium in Falkirk. Now, he and his girlfriend had split up, and this was something like 2 weeks before Christmas. And he'd been out walking the dog, and he decided to hang himself with a dog leash. It was it was pitch black, but it was very difficult to see this young man just hanging. And I was the person who took him off the tree, and it was just so sad that something like a split like that had damaged the boy so much. And obviously we don't know what had happened in his history, but this young man had just taken his life, and just to carry him off and then to carry him away, it was really, really sad. Sad thing to see. I got called to a girl up in Sheltell she was 20-year-old, absolutely stunning girl, beautiful in every way. She had had a heart attack, we believe, 20-year-old, couldn't believe it, but we had to pick her up from the living room. She seemed to have no next of kin, so that was a sad one as well. It's sad when people were there, but it's nice when they're there just, you know, guarding their loved one's body. She was difficult because she was absolutely stunning, such a waste of a life. There was an incident in Falkirk years ago where his mother had psychiatric problems and she tried to cut out her son's heart. Well, I picked up that wee man through from Edinburgh Royal, I think it was, and they brought the little man out and to see what she tried to do. It was absolutely horrific. Just a young man, 8 or 9 or something like that, and you know, really, really sad to carry this little boy back to the funeral parlour. Such a shame, such a young age. One of the hardest ones, and I think this was the one that stayed with me the most, was we were called to Tillicoultry, which is just outside, don't know what, Alloa, Alloa. And it was this lady, 80-year-old. It was obviously a woman who looked after her home, herself. The gardens were immaculate. The house was immaculate. Everything about what she owned was looked after and with love. We went into the garage. It was a wooden garage, and she was perfectly dressed, makeup on, jewellery on. You know, she just looked like something out. What's that thing called? The little prairie thing. Can't remember what it's called. But she was just, you know, looked after herself. Sadly, she was hanging from one of the beams in the garage, and for me that was the hardest one. The story from that was that her husband had died 2 weeks before, and she just couldn't live without him, and she took her own life. That still bamboozles me today. She had lived 80 years, she was a good age, and obviously she'd been with her husband for a long time, but she just couldn't, see a future on her own. And you can understand that after so many years of marriage, but to see her just hanging like that was just horrible. The respect that I have for the elderly just added to the fact of how sad I felt this, and that's one that stuck with me and will stick with me. That have, after having so many years in life, that she decides to end it. So sad. Looking at death isn't a nice thing, and if you're working in that industry, you actually get to the point when you become kind of used to it, and in an emotional sense, it's actually best to try and see past that they are dead bodies, because if you don't get hold and manage your own emotions, you would sink with that. I had a wee look online at a report of the average cost of a funeral. I think anyone who's organised a funeral knows how flipping expensive it is. Anyway, 2019 report from Sun Life shows that the average cost of a funeral is £4,417. There was one done at the same time by Royal London, and they estimated it at £3,785. The only thing about Royal London was there was charges not added on, funeral fees which were to be added on as well. So even if we take an average of 4,000, that's a heck of a lot of money to bury your loved one. The question is, where do you find it? Do you have it? Have you got insurances set out just now? Because that's a lot of money. And just think as well that over the course of the next years, it's just going to rise and rise and rise. I was having a look at, the way I see it is when I pass, I'd be quite happy to go in the brown bin. It wouldn't worry me, my soul's gone. Put me in landfill, and my goodness, I will smell right enough. But they actually have changed it to, it's called the Public Health Funeral, and they set up a funeral, they get an undertaker, a coffin and a car, and you are either taken to the crematorium or the cemetery. So it's still available to people, but I think that's really for people who really don't have anyone else. So you maybe want to tell your friends and family when you pass to hide, so that you get a cheap funeral. So I always said to folk, don't let anybody on you, anybody close to you, because they'll come looking for the cash. And I was in the undertaker business, and I always saw the prices, and it was ridiculous. I saw one funeral that cost $3,000 and another funeral that cost $7,000, and the exact same products were used: coffins, handles, stuff that goes in the coffins. The care that was given, exactly the same. I have to say that a lot of them are a complete rip-off artists, and they're doing it in the public, and nobody cares. I read this about in the Good Funeral Guide regarding undertakers, and this will explain to you why they are so expensive. It says this: undertaking is not regulated by law, so there are no legal requirements for undertakers to be trained to a recognised standard and licence. The law takes a relaxed view of undertakers. Its focus is on getting the dead buried or cremated before they become a health hazard. I read that, and I already knew that before. That is absolutely ridiculous, that there is no regulation against these guys. If you wanted to set up an undertaker business tomorrow, you could, believe it or not. A couple of cars, a freezer, and off you go. But the fact that their lack of regulation means that they can charge whatever they want. I find it distasteful. With the chap I worked for, he threw money around like it was growing on trees. Such was the money he was making. I actually remember the secretary said that she never got to see the figures coming in, so he was even hiding it from her. It's atrocious about what they get away with. It really, really is. There's a lot of bad ones out there. There's one good one, and I'll mention that later on. If you can show me a poor undertaker, I will pay for your funeral myself, because there aren't any. They're all got plenty of money. They're all doing well. They seem to be popping up here, there and everywhere now. There's a wheen of them these days. But I've certainly never been around people who run these businesses and sow poverty. It doesn't exist. We always think of when your time's coming yourself and when you're going to pop your clogs. And it always runs through my mind, you know, do I prefer cremation or do I prefer being buried? And my stupid mind goes to, well, I'd hate to wake up as the fire goes on. I wouldn't be too happy. But then again, I wouldn't like to wake up when I'm 6 feet under, boxed in, covered by gravel and crap, and everybody's buggered off. I mean, what would be the worst? I think actually waking up in the grave, I think that would probably be the hardest one. At least with the fire, you're going to be burnt to a crisp in about 5 minutes. The things are that hot. In that wee box under the ground, you're going to be there for a wee while before you starve or run out of breath. So I think I'd go for the burning one. I saw an article on Falkirk Herald that made me giggle. It was an undertaker advertising that if you signed up for one of those prepaid plans to pay for your funeral in advance, they'd give you £100 voucher. I mean, I found that comical. I mean, a lot of people will think £100, but when you estimate £100 coming off about £4,000, it's no hell of a money. It's no hell of a money at all. It really, I mean, it made me chuckle. You know, I'm as I say, I've got a warped sense of humour. But prepaid plans are all prepaid plans are all the go now. Your undertaker wants you to take these out so that you're paying each month for the funeral. And they say, well, if you're paying up front just now, you don't have the expense at the end. Very true, good idea. However, the costings of these aren't exactly cheap. Dignity does one, which is a peril, what would we call them? Account. We call them accounts, eh? So what you're paying in, £4,000, you can do it over 10 years, and it's going to be $34.19 a month. Now these are rough figures, maths is crap. So there's £34 for 10 years. The Golden Charter, which is one of the big ones, their Premier one comes in at £4,300. Pay that over 5 years, and you're looking at £72 a month. And Golden Leafs, which is another big one, their silver account, you will be paying $3,500, and so basically what that means over 5 years, that's sort of £60. Now, yes, paying like this per month does save a massive bill at the end, but with regards to cost per month, these are big costs. Fine, you could say it's only over 5 years, but for some people, £72 and £60 is a lot of money. A lot of people who have these things, you know, have the money to pay for that monthly. A lot of us just don't have that. The money isn't there, particularly if you're living off benefits of any sort. Where do you find that money? So I thought I'd have a wee look at people under 25 who parents would like to get them to insure themselves. You know, they walk away from the home, so, you know, they'll take care of themselves. But when you look at what they're given and what their expenditures are, how can they afford these prices? So universal credit for someone under 25 is £85 a month, okay? Yes, they'll have their home paid for, but this is £85. I'm going to run through some charges and I'm going to total it for you. So they've got £85 balance per week. If we chuck in £8 for your water, £7 electricity, £15 gas, which is roughly what I'm paying during the winter, £7 house insurance, £3 for a pack of 2 burgers, £2.50 for these wee 4 portion of chips that you can put in the microwave, £3 for tin meals, which could be ravioli, stuff like that, £2.50 for a fresh chicken, which is absolutely lovely, that could be 2 meals. You can pay £70 for frozen potatoes, £1 for one of the big bags of veg, £2, that would probably give you about 2 loaves for the week, £1.85 would give you a nice big tub of cold meat, £2 your nice cup of soup, the Heinz ones are really nice if you're looking for them, £1 for say diluting juice, £1 for milk, and £1.29 for cereal. So that little bill itself comes to 60 quid, okay? So that's £60 off their 85 gives them 25. Outside of that, they've still got household goods to look after their home, clothes if they need them, and if you're on universal credit, you have to go and sign on. So you've still got bus fares, and if you want to do anything away from your home and you need a bus, you're paying for it yourself. So I ask you, off that last £25, how the heck can they pay for funeral plans at £60 and £70? They can't do it. They can't do it at all. And that's a problem with the regulation not being there on undertakers. The people who can afford them are the people who take them. The people who can't should have them, but can't have them because they've not got many money. And that's how it works, sadly. people who have it and don't really need prepaid plans, the people who do need prepaid plans can't afford them, and it's absolutely shocking. I've spoken about this before, about what people are having to live off in Scotland today, and a missionary couple said they don't know what poverty is. They were in, I don't know, some bonga land and come back. Sadly, they're now living off a nice pension from the church, so they have lost the reality of what under 25s are living off these days. Their reply was they've enough to live off, and I said, well, you need to try it. And they said they didn't want to work anyway. Now, mark you, there's a few people like that who don't want to work, okay? There's a percentage of them. Want to sleep all day, party all night. Where they find the money for their drug of choice, I have no idea. But there are people like that. But there's also people who are kind of stuck in no man's land. They're on universal credit, but they really should be on ESA. What happens with the kids who are 18, 20, 25 is the medical profession doesn't want to diagnose them with something. So they're kind of like in a limbo, that they are actually quite sick, that they can't work. So they shouldn't be on universal credit, but because the doctor won't verify what's actually wrong with them, they can't get ESA. So that's the rut that people are in. People are sick, but on universal credit. When you take jobs, if you're unqualified, you have those 0-hour contracts. So you come off your benefits, you end up with 20 hours one week, 1 hour next week. That doesn't work, it doesn't bring in enough money to pay for your rent to begin with. So you decide to go back in universal credit. Takes 5 weeks to get any money through. How on earth do they expect people to survive that 5 weeks when they've lived off whatever it is for 21 hours? It's ridiculous. The other bad thing is the non-set hours and the 0-hour contract. They're just, I went for a job at McDonald's and they couldn't even promise you 10 hours. And for someone who has a £300 rent to pay, it can't be done. So, there are reasons that people don't work. It's not that they don't want to work, that they can't, that it's not financially possible. Jobs can be out with the area, so you've got costings to get there. It's just ridiculous. And particularly through this pandemic, the lack of jobs is ridiculous. Unemployment has risen. And it's just become really difficult for people to work. You get the government, and certain people still have this attitude that you should be in a job. Well, if you can find a job, which is actually an okay job, far less decent job, I'm pretty sure most of them would do it. The other thing I find quite sad is the pressure that undertakers put on people to pay their bill. I mean, I saw this myself a lot, people coming in with dribs and drabs, and the thing is, the majority of it had to be paid before the funeral. So you've got these people who are mourning their loved ones, they're in a really difficult position. They're having to do certain things to be ready for the burial, and you have this undertaker phoning you continually looking for cash. It's ridiculous, and really shouldn't be allowed. I understand they want the money up front, but at the end of the day, you're dealing with people in grief. You're dealing with people who have very little money. The other thing as well is undertakers are quite sneaky. If you get your the body of your loved one sent back to an undertaker, you don't need to have them there. And certainly if there's no one to pay for it, the undertaker will swindle you into paying something because it's more money to them. But just make them rest assured that you've got no money to pay for it. People who are in poverty, people with low incomes, how the heck do you find 3 to 4 grand? I certainly couldn't do it. So, as I say, I'm heading for the flipping broom bin, the compost corner as they call it. Undertakers obviously are in the business of death. When you work there, death itself becomes less of an issue, because I was dealing with it every day, maybe 3-4 bodies each day. It loses for me the tragedy around the death. Obviously it wasn't my loved one anyway, but you're working along with these bodies, and the significance of it actually goes away. And it's something that you kind of have to adapt to, because if you allow your emotions to spill out with every death, then you wouldn't be working very long, and you'd have real psychological problems. So it was a position that you had to, okay, we need to do this and move on. So it was hard, because people passing is a massive impact on family life, on relationships. Kids are left, partners are left. If the person's provident, it can have a whole society. If you're the breadwinner and you pass and you had no insurances, you know, this is a massive time for anybody, and it's a complete darkness area where if you're with someone, your life has just stopped, and as the world moves on, you're having to adapt your life to a new direction, and that's a hellish thing to go through. And I saw it many times, and it's really, really sad to see. The one thing I did want to mention as well, and I just missed it, is I've seen so many families come in, and they're strong families, caring families, they're a close-knit family. But the minute the costs come in for the funeral, family members start to disappear. And then comes down to generally one or two of the family who end up paying for a lot of it. But the rest assured, once the inheritance and once the funeral has passed and there's money or there's a home to empty, you'll find relatives coming that you've never even heard of. Even if we've just got a tiny drop of blood in them, they're coming out there wanting something. I find that despicable that people come who have never been around a loved one and they're looking for watches, they're looking for TVs, they're looking for anything they can get their grubby hands on. And sadly, that's more the norm within the funeral business. That one or two end up paying for it and everyone wants a piece of the pie. It's disgusting. I hated that part of the business because honestly, they descend like vultures. You're dealing with somebody who's sad and they're burying their loved one, they pay their account and out they come. They tend to show up in dribs or drabs at the funeral to make an appearance, and then it's, you know why they made an appearance. They're looking for something. Hated that part, didn't like it. There's quite a few people with that. I wanted to dig holes and bury myself, but sadly, that's what happens with families within that sort of area. And no matter how strong a family we are, when it comes to money, it's very difficult to have respect for some of the people that I saw. I dealt with every undertaking in Falkirk. I used to bring back the bodies of the loved ones to the different funeral partners, so I got to know all of them, generally the bosses and then, you know, people who worked there as well. I don't really have much respect for any of them. I found them rude, sarcastic, unhelpful. There was one who I thought was really professional, really kind, always, if he was at a funeral, very positive, very professional, treated people with respect and dignity. When I dealt with the chap, he was very nice, he was helpful, could have a laugh with him, and I found him to be a very professional outfit. I'm talking about John O'Connor's in Camlin. Sadly, John, the father, passed away, I think it was last year there, but I dealt with the young man, Stephen, John's son, and always found him to be a caring guy. I liked him that much that my daughter had lost her baby, Harley, and we buried little Harley through John O'Connor's in Camlin, and that's the respect I have for the man. Very nice young chap, and if you are in that sad area, I would say go to them first of all, because you will get a professional care there, and they're very, very nice to you. So John O'Connor's, that's the one for me, and so that's who I would send you to. Death is a horrible place. It's a place of absolutes. It's a place of no returns. It's a place of shock. If someone had passed in an accident, or someone who'd taken their lives, it's something that you didn't prepare for. There's devastation, that there's a hole within the family. The family's having to move on without this loved one. Maybe they were the life and soul, or maybe they were someone who was down, depressed, whatever it is, they leave their mark upon the family life. Your life's changed. The family dynamic is changed. You maybe go to dinners for the family and there's that hole of the loved one who's left. It's a hard experience for everyone, and I definitely don't think there's anywhere you can prepare yourself, even for people who've been told they have an hour to live, a week to live. There's no preparation, because your mind's just sucking in everything and the reality hasn't kicked in yet. It's death is seen for what it is. It's an end. It's an end of the life of the loved one, and in many ways end of the life of the family and the trajectory it was going. But what if death wasn't an end? What if we looked at it differently? What if we looked at it from a faith point of view? What if we looked at it from a God point of view? Then what the Bible would say is it's not a place of ending, it's a place of beginnings. See, when we pass from this life, I believe we go home. Home is with God. God prepared a place for us and we're going to Him. What if that was a reality? What if that is where we were going? What if when we pass from this horrible life at times, and we moved into a paradise and actually living with God, and as we are with our family and friends, living with them, communion with them, being around them, living our lives in peace and harmony. What if that was life after death? What if there was life? What if that is the projection we're going? Then that must be something to look forward to. That must be something that would take away the sting of death. And I just want to read something to you, and I completely forgot to look it up. But this is, when we believe in the Bible, we believe that Jesus, I've done a few talks past, was a historical figure. And it was recorded that he was alive, that he died, and he rose again. There's a promise in Scripture, and this is a promise to you. It's Revelation 21, it says, I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, or sorrow, or crying, or pain. All these things are gone forever. When we pass, if we believe in Jesus, we move to paradise, where pain and suffering has ended, where through faith in Christ we can be reunited one day with our loved ones who are passed after us. We'll be with those who passed before us in Jesus, and that is the hope of life when we die. And it's a different take on what we feel life is, but I believe it's a truth as well. I keep saying the one thing I want you to do with these talks is make us think about life, about each other, what we go through, how we live, and how we need to support each other. But there's a faith element as well. I want people to bring God into their existence and allow him to live in their lives as well. There is a promise that there's more. I believe there is. I can't see it. I believe it, and that's faith. Please read John 3:16, Romans 10 and 9. They will show you Jesus and the way to him. I pray that this talk might have helped in some way. It's something I was involved in an undertaker business, and the thing that got me through all that was the hope that I had. I saw death after death after death, but I knew that death didn't need to be an end, that it could be a beginning. The truth that Jesus was a man, the truth that he rose from the dead, and the truth is he's coming to get us, to take us home. Surely that's worth putting faith in. I hope you're well. I'm going to see it Friday night, but Thursday night I'm getting even closer. You can see my spots. They're getting better actually. But take care. If you want to leave a comment, if you're going to criticise my grammar, that's fine. But remember, I'm a bit of dum-dum, so that's me. Take care now. God bless.